Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagan. We are back here in Studio 130 for another fun-filled, action-packed episode of the Gold Standard and Iowa Conservative Podcast. Once again today, you have John Hendrickson here in studio. John came even more prepared today than normal. He has, a lot of times John will have notes here, and today he's got what appears to be a large document. So
yes, this is I don't know. I went to print this article from the Register, and it came out on legal size paper. So.
That's great. I don't know. That's not legal size, John. That's like poster board there. But anyway, before we go any further, don't forget to that we are on video. We're on YouTube and Rumble, iTunes and Spotify on audio. And please don't forget to subscribe, share, like, give us a good comment, all those things if you do, in fact, like the content, because we certainly appreciate it. But it's a rainy April day here, John.
Yeah.
We've been in the office all week. Still going over what happened in the legislative session, and it's always a little quiet, that first week after they get done. But as we've been through this, we've got a couple of things to go over today. In a little bit, we're going to go over your article that you wrote on the state budget and some of what went in it. We touched on that last time a little bit, but we're going to go a little deeper on that, and you've got a good piece up on it. Before we go any further in that, though, I felt compelled to respond to the Des Moines Register's editorial today. Did you read this?
I did, yeah. I just got done reading it.
Well, so this is sort of maybe one of their responses to the legislative session. But here's the headline. Kim Reynolds picked this legislature, and it steamrolled an extreme path for Iowa. And the subtitle here: Iowa should wrap up its experiment with extremism, not just to better serve residents, but because we worry what Reynolds might try next. Did I say that in the scariest voice possible?
Yeah, we should have some dramatic music.
Good. Yeah. I don't have that loaded. That's a good idea. We could have had that on the sound pad, but this is, again, another effort to lament that 8 years of a Republican trifecta and all of this that came with it, laying all of it at Governor Reynolds' feet for these different conservative reforms. It really just touches on all their favorite criticisms. Yeah. I think it's all sort of distilled into one wonderful example of how they actually perceive all of this. But give me your initial response to this, and I'm going to go through little bits and pieces here. But
this first, I think this is just sour grapes, and it just shows how far I think those on the left, or progressives, liberals, whatever you want to call them, have how desperate I think they are to try to make an argument against this governor and the legislature, and even just the as you said, that subtitle, because we worry what Reynolds might try to do next. Yeah, I mean it's just ridiculous.
Well, first of all, I think underlying this is the idea that this is somehow authoritarian. That all of it's an exercise to see how much we can do that's simply what the governor wants to do. Here's the fundamental thing. Kim Reynolds picked this legislature. No, actually, the voters of the state of Iowa picked this legislature.
Right. Yeah.
So you have supermajorities or close to them in both chambers. Those were elected by the people of this state.
Yeah.
So they go into talking about, again, that the governor got involved in legislative primaries. Well, good grief. You may not like it.
Yeah.
You may have been on the other side of one of those primaries, but is she somehow precluded from rendering an opinion on who should win a race? I mean, people endorse candidates all over the place.
That's
why
right.
is it?
Yeah.
Why is it somehow inappropriate? It may be abnormal, but she is allowed to have an opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's allowed to write a check.
Yeah.
Or do a TV ad. Who cares?
Yeah.
That is that's her free speech right.
That's right.
Okay,
and
so 4 of these people came out of these primaries. Well, what about the other 146 legislators up there? It went in front of a voter. Voters elected wide conservative majorities to the legislature. They elected her by almost 20 points in the last election. This is the policy agenda
That's right.
that the voters of Iowa elected, whether the Register's editorial board likes it or not. And you can use whatever pejorative you want. Sorry, it came from the voters first.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this agenda is not extreme, for one thing, and it just shows how far. I mean, it's almost like the elite in Washington, D.C. They just have no idea what's going on. They're just clueless.
Yeah.
And I think the Register's editorial board is clueless. I mean, and because, would they criticize a Governor DeGier?
Yeah.
If she got involved in primaries or did, or supposedly steamrolled her agenda if she had large progressive majorities?
Yeah. No, absolutely not. So they go on and on, the laundry list of ideas that they don't like. I mean, again, what you've said, ESAs, they keep coming back on the ESAs. Yeah. You know what? It's done. It's done, guys. A lot of the tax bills, which were supported by wide majorities of Iowans and legislators, bipartisan bill.
Very progressive Democrats supported that tax bill.
And let's not forget that their own poll, when they put it in the field, showed that 60% of Iowans supported the eventual elimination of the income tax.
Yeah.
But here we right-size the budget to try and keep it aligned with what we need to spend. That's somehow that's dangerous and authoritarian from Kim Reynolds.
So who's reflecting Iowa better, Governor Reynolds or the Des Moines Register?
Yeah. The heartbeat bill is mentioned in here, which when you break down its individual components is actually pretty close to the middle of the road position on abortion in the state of Iowa. Maybe people have a different opinion on that, but let's see. They go into water quality. They go, strict limits on new spending by cities and counties. Actually, John, the bill didn't have strict limits on spending by cities and counties because they continue to just jack up the taxes across the state. They may not like it, but let's not. I mean, if you want to create a laundry list of conservative reforms, let's at least be accurate in what they did, because that one still has a long ways to go.
Oh, absolutely. And one could even argue that they eased up on some of that a little bit.
Yeah. Here's one of the dastardly things that this extreme governor and legislator did. They want to control books and libraries and treatments in quotes here for transgender children. Again, the people of the state of Iowa voted for these folks, and this is one of the reasons they elected them. So I whatever. Now, okay, so I've gone on my rant there, but I want to get to another piece in here after they go on and on about all these other, again, issues that they think that were extreme for not handling. Talking about how so many of these bills came from, I'm going to read this for you. Reynolds and the legislature can't claim to be crafting bills to answer Iowa's unique needs. Several of the most objectionable laws clearly came from think tanks model legislation, copy the action of other conservative-run states, or both. Okay, there's a lot there. First of all, many of these bills were in response to coordinated 50-state attempts by the left to make extreme, unprecedented changes. And so it's going to have a very similar response.
That's
you
right.
want to ban universal basic income at the local level? Yeah, it's because they're trying to establish this across the country. It is in response.
Right. Yes, yep.
And if that came from an interest group on the right, fine. Are we going to pretend that the left doesn't have think tanks?
Yeah.
And that they don't get ideas from them?
Yep.
I mean, it's just because we're actually getting them put into law that it's somehow that's the think tanks on the right that are, and you're just assuming that because there is a conservative think tank that offers a piece of legislation, it is de facto bad. Or that something that was a good idea in another state is a bad idea in Iowa just because it's similar legislation. I mean, the logical steps to get there are stunning.
It is.
Okay, I'm going to quit. I need to let you go, John.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I don't know if I can add to that because...
you need to try because it's your turn.
No, you're absolutely right. And one is that there is a number of progressive, liberal-leaning policy groups that advocate for legislation, put out model legislation. So it's hypocritical of them to point that out. And then they also talk about later in that same paragraph, they said, cutting deals out of the public eye, and they talk about the tax bill coming at the last minute, and it's going to cost the state treasury $1 billion over 2 years. So you already noted that there was some very liberal Democrats who voted for the tax bill, and even the LSA fiscal note.
Right.
Basically said that chances are that it won't even have to tap into the taxpayer relief fund to cover it because revenues remain strong. So I think this is, to me, I just think they have nothing else. They have no other arguments. And you're seeing this at the state level and at the national level. So the easiest thing to do is try to paint conservatives as extreme, and of course attacking democracy, which is a bunch of BS, and that's
they only want the kind of democracy that ensures that they get to continue to elect progressive leaders. They don't want the kind of democracy that is free and fair elections.
And I've talked to a lot of people in different states, and not all these people are Republican. And I for example, I know a lot of people in Minnesota that are Democrats that are sick and tired of the liberal extreme agenda, and they say we like what you're doing in Iowa, because in a sense I would say what the governor is doing is she is protecting common sense.
Yes,
that most Americans agree with.
Yep. I can't let it go without talking about how they refer to this tax bill again, John. It would cost the state treasury $1 billion. No, it will save the taxpayers of the state of Iowa $1 billion over 2 years.
That's a great
point. And if that
yeah.
comes out of the dollars that have been over collected by the state taxpayers that are currently held by state government. But let's not pretend that the quote-unquote state treasury is this magical pot of money that exists over here that doesn't have a source. Give me a break. I mean, these are not public dollars. They are taxpayer dollars. And we're getting them back to Iowans because if it's $1 billion over 2 years, it's because they're currently being overtaxed by $1 billion a year above and beyond what the state needs to operate. And we're going to get into that in a minute on the budget article.
That's absolutely right.
So, I mean, it's just time after time, it's ignoring the realities here.
And the other funny thing is, of course, they a huge part of this article is the area education agencies, which was a big issue this session. But it's basically the Register saying, how dare the governor try to reform a massive bureaucracy? Yeah. Who said that the AEA is untouchable?
Right.
And or that state government can or shouldn't be reformed. And it is, we were on the last program, I mentioned how biased the media is. This is an example. Wow. But the whole discussion over AEA was completely biased in the left demonizing what the governor was trying to do.
And I don't have a problem with progressives and Democrats. I mean, they're the minority party. That's their job in our system to oppose or try and point out flaws. And I don't think anybody the Des Moines Register Editorial Board is certainly going to, I mean, they have a left of center worldview, and it's going to come out. I don't blame it, but I mean, I think when there's real flaws in that logic, I think we need to point it out. And I don't think, I don't care what corner you're coming, you're not entitled to your own version of the facts.
Yeah.
Now, I guess I'll close with this because you mentioned the AEA bill. This whole premise of this is that Governor Reynolds gets whatever she wants. And because she has somehow hand-selected a bunch of people that will rubber stamp whatever she wants. Yeah. Well, I'm here to tell you that is not.
Absolutely.
I mean, she's the governor of the state. Yeah. She sets the agenda, and she gets a lot of her agenda, thankfully, passed. Yeah. But you and I both know that she did not get everything she wanted this year.
No, including her tax bill.
She wanted a lot more on AEAs.
Yeah.
Didn't happen because the legislature couldn't get there on some of it.
That's a great point.
She wanted more on income taxes than what it ended up happening. She wanted this a change to the unemployment trust fund that ended up not passing at the end. So let's dispense with this idea that the legislature is unwilling to say no to the governor when they're not there. Yeah. I think they largely support her conservative agenda. And finally, this is what's going to happen going forward. I mean, this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone with regard to the AEAs, that when you try a conservative reform, is they're going to try and attempt, well, that's out of bounds. You can't touch that one. And I think for the conservative reform mindset, John, there should be no sacred cows. Everything can at least be examined. I mean, everything that government does, every service it provides, should absolutely be under scrutiny from the general public and from our elected officials. We should expect it to be done well. And I'm not saying that the service, this isn't even about the AEAs. I think many of the services they provide are very important. This whole argument isn't about that. It is that there shouldn't be anything out of bounds to say, are we getting our money's worth? Could we do it better? Could we do it different? And could we honor the taxpayer in a better way while preserving those essential functions of government?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And the other thing, I've noticed a pattern developing here by especially those on the left and the political class, that basically, whether it was local governments complaining about the property tax bill or the AAs, the first thing they do is try to win the debate, is scare people. Local governments saying, well, because of this, because we can't take a windfall from assessments, we're going to have to cut police and fire and EMS and they never, this. Yeah. And the AA then says, well, the governor's trying to do this, and little Sally and Billy won't be able to learn how to read or write because right. Special education's going away, and so they demonize the issue, which is right. It's unfortunate.
Right. Well, good. I think I feel better now. I needed to speak.
Yes.
Sometimes, John, as you know, around here, whether we're in pre-production or even first thing in the morning, is that sometimes I just have to get my words out on some of these issues. So thank you for indulging me on it.
And I'm glad you wanted to talk about that, because it deserves a response.
Okay, well, good. So also in sort of a continuing to look back at the legislative session, and I suspect that we'll be doing this for some time to come, but you had we talked about this last time, but you went into more depth on the fiscal year 2025 budget, and nothing is more exciting to talk about than the budget. But I think before I go in and let you talk about this, I want to frame up why it's important. Well, a couple of reasons. One, we just sort of hinted at a minute ago. These are your dollars. Where are they going? What are they going for? Is that the right amount? How are they being good stewards of our tax dollars? And secondly, for those of us that are pursuing tax reform and wanting to continue to lower rates, as we talked about last time, the budget itself is one of the critical components of that. You're not going to be in a position to reduce taxes if you can't keep a lid on spending. So, with that having been said, this is sort of a look back at conservative Iowa budget and some of you. So, give me your thoughts. Again, recap the state budget and some of what you're looking at.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And so spending sets the stage for everything. And I think one thing that the governor and this legislature has not getting a lot of credit for, and they should, is they have really done a good job with trying to control spending and kind of budget prudently. And I think that's very important. And so this session, we saw spending increase a little bit higher than previous sessions. So, for example, last year for the fiscal year 24 budget was $8.5 billion. This year it's higher at $8.9 billion. Now, prior to this session, I think we mentioned this last time, that we did an article before session, and it's called the Iowa Conservative Budget, which we've done 3 or 4 of these now. And basically what we do is we try to give a ballpark figure of how much the budget should grow, and we try to keep that within the growth of population plus inflation.
And just as a reminder, this is the project that you do together with Vance Ginn, who we've had on the podcast, who's is from Texas, worked in the Trump White House, is a budget director, analyst. And so, I mean, anyway, just to give a sense of that, this is not just an article that you crank out on a Friday afternoon. There's some real thought,
some thought into it.
Knowledge that goes into this.
Because Vance just to give folks an idea, Vance, for example, was one of the chief writers of President Trump's.
Yeah, right. So anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to frame that up a little bit.
And so we calculated that the budget should be within $8.8 billion. That's including, the controlling population plus inflation. And so, they came a little higher, $8.9 billion. But I was talking with Vance, and when you take in the tax cut, it basically comes in line with the conservative Iowa budget because Iowans will be getting over $1 billion back with this flat tax will be brought in next year. So, and of course, when you go through the budget, that's the other thing I think it's interesting is the left acts like this legislature is gutting government, and government continues to grow. And I always like to say that it's only in government when you slow the growth is it considered a cut.
Yeah.
And so right now the budget is roughly less about 4.7% increase in spending, which is
it is slightly higher than what we have seen out of this Republican trifecta.
Yeah,
but it's not terribly out of line from the historical average.
No, and so the other thing we always hear is this: they're underfunding education, they're not investing, and that's the code word that liberals use for spending, investing.
Underfunding is under how much they'd love to throw at it.
Yes, yeah.
The benchmark is their wish.
Yes.
Anything less than that is underfunded. Oh, okay, good. I just make sure we.
And so education by itself makes up 56% of the general fund budget, and you combine that with Department of Health and Human Services, that's roughly 88% of total spending. So you're looking at a far majority of the entire general fund that's being spent on roughly education and DHS type programs, especially Medicaid.
I think it's interesting, John. I want to get onto this too. That we still, with additional spending, tax rates coming down, online, the general fund surplus, the ongoing structural surplus continues to grow. Yeah, I want to give you some time to
flip my charts here.
Not only that, but you got it printed backwards on there. I mean, come on, John. You got to step this up. People are watching. We're trying to tell them to get on video, and you're in here flipping over posters in here trying to get to charts. But no, I think it's important. The point being, the structural surplus for right now continues to grow. That's going to come back down. We know it will when the additional rate cuts come online. And the taxpayer relief fund is projected to continue to grow, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, we're not that these are unaffordable tax cuts. We continue. And this has been year after year, going all the way back to, frankly, even the 2018 tax bill, but certainly when we went to the flat taxes, we can't afford it. It's just right around the corner. We're going to be bankrupt. And yet we go around the next corner, and the corner after that, and we continue to have enough money to fund the priority items in the budget.
That's right.
It will come down. We know it will. It's supposed to come down. But this doom and gloom, the apocalypse, is not happening.
No.
The data is very clear.
And just to give folks an idea, and this is from the LSA projections, which again, as we said, LSA is very conservative in their projections. I mean, they're not doing dynamic.
Small C conservative,
So they're not doing dynamic analysis, and so basically, right now they're projecting that the surplus for this current fiscal year 24, is going to be $1.9 billion, and the fiscal year 25 surplus is going to be $2.4 billion. And right now, the taxpayer relief fund is projected to be close to $4 billion.
Yeah,
and then plus both reserve accounts are full at their limit.
Yep.
And this shows that Iowa is on a strong fiscal foundation. And I think the other thing is where the left forgets is when you look at some. These like Minnesota, and we've talked about this. I mean, people probably get tired of hearing about it, but I think it's important because the fact is, when you continue to ratchet up spending, it creates budget problems.
Yep.
And you're seeing that in New York. You're seeing that in Minnesota. You've seen that. Oftentimes, this has been for decades. Like Illinois. I mean, Illinois has been a financial basket case for years. Same with New York and New Jersey, all these states that they think that the solution to a good economy is just tax and spend, and it just doesn't work. And, you always hear the left saying, well, the tax cut is going to destroy Iowa. Well, as you said, that's not happening, and it's not reflected in how our economy is doing or in how our fiscal situation is.
Yep.
In fact, it's the direct opposite.
Yep. Well, it's great. I mean, we're going to have more to say on the budget, and some of this stuff is really hard to get at, as we've talked about, John, where the state budget is complicated. There's many funds that go into different budget areas, and trying to true that up, and everyone sort of looks at it a little different. We'll try and get it when we get some of the LSA analysis and maybe some of the caucus staff analyses and looking at that and get an idea, and we can go over it some more. So this is the last. Go ahead.
One thing I just want to mention too about Iowa's budget, which I think Iowa does a good job. Not saying that there isn't places to trim or cut, but we don't see a lot of waste.
Right.
I mean, and we I remember when I first came on board, we did a deep dive in the budget, and there was not a lot of what you would consider pork type spending. And so I think the legislature has done a good job of trying to function on what are the priorities of government.
Yeah, I think that's right. And most of the lion's share of state spending is things that are going to be the same or slightly more year over year.
Yes.
The sum total of our K-12 education spending is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
You're going to have that. You're going to have this big Medicaid expenditure. It's mandated by the federal government. And so if you wanted to go in and cut spending, those two items right there off the top are probably off the table without some really painful reforms. You're already only dealing with about 20%, as you pointed out, of all of those dollars that you even have to work with on trying to limit, which is even more why controlling the growth is so important, because you only have this piece over here on the side that you have to work with when you're trying to limit spending. So, okay, we're going to have to wrap up, John.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but I appreciate that. I'll close with the quote that you used from Senator Jason Schultz. Both Democrats and Republicans need to realize that tax policy is affected by spending. And when you start seeing spending creeping up for annual year after year, new good ideas, you can't have good tax policy. Amen to that. Yeah. Senator Schultz, thank you for the clarity on that. And
that was my favorite quote of the session.
Yeah, that's great. All right. That's all the time we have for today. Appreciate you joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe and tell your friends. With all of that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.